Hey, hey, hey. How you doing, people? This is part of my interview series for Duggystone Radio. I'm Kurt Pickstone, and on today's interview special, it's Steve Bonham and The Long Road. Amazing band. Part of Ken Meakin's stable. Oh, yeah. From Country Music Social Media. So I caught up with the guys. One of the band members played with Saxon. So yeah, a bit of a band of all shapes and sizes, and absolutely wonderful to talk to the guys about the lyrics, about some of the songs. We review some of their songs, where they've come from, what they're doing, what they should be doing. Anyway, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. If you listen on Mixcloud or Soundcloud, please come and join us, duggystoneradio.com. The Duggystone Show. Right, people, as part of the interview series that I'm currently doing for Duggystone Radio, I'm Kurt Pickstone from Duggystone Radio. If you don't know who I am, you soon will. So over the next coming weeks and months, I'm going to be interviewing lots of interesting artists, promoters and people from all genres of music, from hip-hop to rap to country, you name it, we'll be talking to it. And today, got an amazing band, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves right now. So take it away, guys. Who are you?
I'm Steve Bonham.
Yeah.
He's...
I'm Kev Moore.
And I'm Chris the Bishop Lyden.
Brilliant.
We're The Long Road.
The Long Road. Wonderful. And I've come across you through Ken Meakin. I need to give him a shout out because he works tirelessly on country music social media for amazing bands in the UK and across the pond, and I've come to grow and love some of the artists that I would never have discovered if it wasn't for Ken. So big shout out to Ken Meakin for everything that he does. He's a lovely, lovely guy, a lovely human. He is a lovely human. So wonderful. So on this fine day that we find ourselves in, what theme have you been on? It might be lovely when this goes out, but it's absolutely pissing it down at the minute.
The hedgehogs are climbing trees up here, I can tell you.
Yeah, they will be. Yeah.
Maybe we should ask Kev, what's the weather like for you at the moment?
What's the weather like where you are, Kev? Is it nice?
It's stunning because I'm over in Spain, and it's very sunny most of the time, and it is today.
Oh.
That's why I'm stuck inside the studio.
Yeah.
Terrible. We're all stuck here in the UK in rain. So tell us a bit about, Steve, tell us a bit about the band and how it all came to fruition.
Well, like all good stories, it's a series of accidents, really. I've been playing for, all my life. You know, I've never stopped. Started off doing blues and rock and ended up being a folk singer for a while. And then 20 years ago now, at least, I came across Chris, who was scarcely born then, but was a great keyboard player. And we've just done loads of stuff for ages. We have this. And then magically, 5 or 6 years ago, I bumped into my old mate from school, Kev. Kev was, when we were all kids, he was the one who actually knew what he was doing. So quite rightly, he disappeared quite quickly off the scene and played with Saxon and Christie and Danish heavy metal bands and anyone you like to name. So we all just sort of reunited by accident, I think, about 6 or 7 years ago, and we just worked really well in the studio and really well live. It's been an absolute blast. So these two are the proper musicians.
Don't be modest, man. Don't be modest.
I'm just the agitator.
I think it was the Victoria Inn, wasn't it, Steve, where I caught up with you after a long...
that was it was a big rock venue in Derby called the Victoria Inn, and I just finished doing a whole year of gigs, which were mostly with Chris, mostly fundraising actually for a friend who was a great bass player, and he can't play anymore for various reasons. So that was the end of that. And Kev turned up to and then said, "Yeah, okay, that sounds like you half know what you're doing now, Steve. It's been taking 40 years, but I'm in."
A late bloomer. Steve's a late bloomer, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Right, one of cranky old bottles of wine. Leave it long enough and it'll taste of something.
Yeah, either vinegar or a beautiful vintage.
But whatever, it'll be useful. Yeah.
Well, because you can either put it on your food or you can drink it with your food. So
after that gig, the next time we saw Kev was in a studio, wasn't it? When we went to Ireland a couple of months later.
Yeah.
And we were recording in this tiny little recording studio that only ever really sees folk musicians, you know, very sort of gentle, quiet place. And Kev walked in, you know, 6 foot whatever, looking a little bit terrifying to the studio. And he's like, right, what's this guy wearing, you know, the jewelry and the stuff around his neck and big black hair and tall? What's this heavy metal player doing
in my studio?
Quiet little, you know, Irish folk studio.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I can get that. And straight away, Kev looks every bit of rock and roll. But if you said, what does rock and roll look like? You'd pull Kev out and go, here he is, rock and roll. Wouldn't you? Hey, is the Lemmy in your band, isn't he? So
yeah, I am the
Lemmy. Many crucifixes. I think he'd raided a few churches on his way in, actually.
But there again, there's a great lesson for life, though, isn't it? Perception. You know, don't judge a book by the cover.
Within seconds of Kev starting to play, the engineer was like, "Yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He doesn't just look the part; he can do it as well."
And if you don't tell him that, he'll kill you.
No, he'll nail you to a tree.
Yeah, wonderful. That's brilliant. I'll tell you what, and that's why I like doing these interviews, because I like to get under the skin of what is going on. And I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get, because we've not been going very long. And you talked about when you first met. So if we zip back to probably one of your first tracks that we obviously selected earlier on, which is Canyons in the Desert. So we're going to play that in a minute. So what's this song about? And is there a story behind it?
Well, I'm intrigued to listen to this, because Steve, what is this song
about? Yeah,
I'll tell you what.
We'd like to know.
Should we play it and you can make some nonsense up whilst he's playing?
I'll make some notes up. Yeah.
You've got 3 minutes. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Is howling outside your door. Friends you can count on, you're not quite so sure. And find you standing on the wrong side of the road. Girl, put down your heavy load. When you keep on singing, but you're getting it wrong. You remember the words, but have forgotten the song. When you can't make the choices from the things that they showed. Girl, put down your heavy load. Dragons in the night, turtles in the sea, canyons in the desert looking good to me. Dancing on the boulevard way down in New Orleans. Turn sideways to the sun and let the Joker steal the scene. When there's too much that's playing inside of your head, late night confusion going on in your bed. It's time to move out, a time to reload. Girl, put down your heavy load. Dragons in the night, turtles in the sea, canyons in the desert looking good to me. Dancing on the boulevard way down in New Orleans. Turn sideways to the sun and let the Joker steal the scene. When the bat is flying like a shot in the night, whatever you're doing it right. Take the love to where the deep waters flow. Girl, put down your heavy load. Dragons in the night, turtles in the sea, canyons in the desert looking good to me. Dancing on the boulevard way down in New Orleans. Turn sideways to the sun and let the Joker steal the scene. In the night, turtles in the sea,
cracker.
You're looking good to me.
I've been playing that on my new country show on a Monday night, 6 p.m. If you want to join us on there. Sorry, a blatant plug. Yeah, I like it. I've been playing it on my new country show on a Monday evening, and that's what I do: showcase emerging artists, the latest tracks, and everything in between. So, cracking tune, like it.
When Steve sent me the lyrics to that, it was it kind of and a basic sort of guitar back into it. It was another one of his journeys lyrically where you sort of think, where is he going with this story? And it helps me actually come up with my musical parts for these things, because it suggests something very strange to me. So I sort of go off in that direction then, you know. And depending on the tenor of the lyric, depends on whether I stay a bit mainstream or lose my mind, you know.
Yeah, you can't ever answer. I can never answer a question, what's the song about, unless it's specifically something I've seen.
Story, yeah.
But that was quite a weird one. I think I just got back from a very weird time in the States. I'd been trekking through Appalachia, through Tennessee, and you know, it's like getting in the TARDIS and coming out in the Old Testament to go to that part of the world. You know, it's a part of the world where they, you know, still have church ceremonies where they play with poisonous snakes. You know, people are making crack cocaine up in the woods. I mean, it's a hardcore place. You know, the only decent buildings are the Baptist chapels. Everyone else is falling down, and it's great poverty. And where would the lyric come from? I don't know. That was going on in my head. It was kind of saying to people, it's going to be all right, really, even though it's kind of mad. Yeah. And then, I don't know, I was actually lying on the settee. I think somebody probably put a narcotic in my cocoa. And,
it has got that sound to it, and the music's got that sound to it, like a mystical. And what you were saying, Kev, I can tell why you've gone with that. That sound to it, because on YouTube and that you do a chat about what you're about and that really grabbed me. I really liked it, about a feeling about.
I think you sang the demo lying down on the settee, didn't you, Steve?
I did. I mean, the whole thing. My legs had stopped moving, but it was. You know, a bit. I think, and I have. I look at my kind of songwriting life. It's not like I've ever followed a genre or a particular artist, but particular songs stay with me. And Riders on the Storm by the Doors is like one of those things that stays in my head.
What a track.
And it is. Yeah. It's so moody. And what Kev did to there and then Chris did there is, weirdly, they put a huge amount of space in that song.
You know, it's all about the space, that song.
It's full of dark corners, because they didn't go, right, here we are, it's a rock song full on, you know. They just both laid back and made these sounds.
I think that's the thing.
Playing the top past the nut of his guitar at one point. You know, so that's the bit you don't play for most people. But
it was one of those, before we went to the studio, it was one of those songs that we weren't really sure how it was going to fall together, because I don't think we played it together. I don't think we'd rehearsed that one. I think it was one of the ones that we'd had in bits that we thought, well, we'll have to put that one together to do. But and I think that Steve's right. The idea of there being space, for me, it's the sort of. It doesn't feel that it's close to me. It feels like it's big. It feels expansive. It feels like a landscape to me. And the sounds that Kev's making on the guitars with various effects and harmonics and high things and adding reverb and delay and stuff, it just adds to this expanse for me. But then there's sometimes when you feel, it does feel like you're dead close in, because things like the intensity that ramps up in that chorus. I just love it, and things do start sort of get closer in at that point. But then it releases again. And you're back out in the wilderness, and that's the sensation I get from it. And I think it's amazing that you can make those sort of things appear in people's heads from
because
play notes on piano and guitar.
But it does feel like that to me as a listener, especially because you've got the title, haven't you? You've the title of it, Canyons in the Desert, and then you start listening to it, and that title takes you to that place anyway. I've never been in those desert areas, some place I'd love to go, and I can imagine it is like going into a different world, because you go to the States, I've been to a few places in the States, and it's amazing how it changes from one place to the other, isn't it? You know, it's just...
I think that's the beauty of song, though, that it can allow your mind to travel there. I mean, you look at some of the early lyrics of somebody like Bernie Taupin, who painted landscapes of America, and he'd never been away from Norfolk or somewhere, you know. I mean, and it's fascinating what you can do with that, with your mind, you know.
Well, yeah, and that's what music does, doesn't it? It transcends across cultures and everything, doesn't it? And it also, what I like about it takes you to a place. So if you've got a track that you've listened to in a certain place, and then you hear it many years later, it's like a time machine, isn't it? Music, it'll take you straight back to that place, even that feeling, everything. It'll take you right back to that point. It's bizarre how the human mind works and how emotion and emotive music is.
And of course, it's why they use music in therapy so much, you know.
Yeah. There's been a lot of things with people that have suffered from really severe dementia, don't they? And they play music to them, and that person who's lifeless, sat there, will start being happy singing. And as soon as they take their headphones off, it's almost like a robot's been switched. It's bizarre. It's the bizarrest thing. Yeah. So, I think it's just a human thing, and it's to create music. Wow. Mm-hmm. So, if you've been, obviously, everything's been off the cards. Was your plan to be doing any touring?
Yeah, we had quite a few gigs lined up, both together, and we actually had to postpone the old-fashioned launch of the EP. You know, we do gigs in Derbyshire and London and over in Ireland. And then I had gigs in New York. I mean, I had quite a nice little roster of stuff lined up. But we're taking a risk. I mean, we just confirmed that we're going to play in Dublin, which will be our debut over there, which is I'm really looking forward to in September. You know, the fate's willing, because at the moment that's pretty opened up there, and they are doing the gigs again from mid-August, and hopefully we can tie one in. You know, things willing again, you know, inshallah, we could tie one in London and one up here in Derbyshire, and at least do 3 and play live. You know?
Yeah, I get that.
It's hard. This is, I mean, for all of us. I think all 3 of us have now been in one place longer than we've been for 20 odd years. I've not used to sitting in my house for,
certainly. I was working out. It's the longest I've not done a show since I was 10 years old.
Wow. Well, that's yeah.
That's scary.
That is scary.
Especially when you know how old I am.
Well, we won't even go there, Kev. We won't even go
there.
Don't
go there, mate.
Won't even go there. So, I mean, obviously we're talking about your band, but you're quite an interesting character because of your background, and that obviously wasn't really aware of your previous background before Steve mentioned it and said it before, but playing with people like Saxon, that's... I bet that was more...
Yeah.
I've had a more rock and roll, wasn't it?
Varied career, yeah. I've been a long time friend of Graham Oliver, the guitarist from the original lineup, and I played on his solo album, and in fact we featured a track on our recent podcast that I co-wrote with him and, believe it or not, Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
It was a bit
of a name drop there, Kev.
I know it sounds bizarre, but it's true. And so I've had an interesting, very broad palette for my musical career, and I love that, and I hope it also brings that's what I can bring to the table with the Long Road, because that the sort of genre is something I hadn't really worked in before, and I think that the reason it works with the Long Road is that Steve and Chris and I all bring 3 distinctly different flavors to the pot. As Steve often refers to it as a gumbo, you know, it's a bit like that with us.
Yes, and I've heard him say that. It's one, and you're right. And those different flavors and those different things, that recipe, putting it together, because the sound is different, isn't it? You're not playing, and that's what I like the genre of country music as well as some of the other genres. It's diverse, isn't it? It's not just one thing. It's not just.
It is. There's a lot of treasures in under that label, you know. There really is.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll have another track, and then we'll have a chat. We'll have a little chat, more chat with Chris, and then we'll get back to a general one. So, if people go find you, people can find you on Spotify and all the usual places, YouTube, and one of your most successful track on Spotify is the Ballad of Dwayne and Billy Marie. Is that one?
That's the
That's
one.
the one.
So I'll tell you what. We're going to spin that record, as it were.
Side by side like lovers, counting all the stars, and the old black bear, and the creaking pine, while coyotes sang. We were strumming our guitars. Carved upon the white oak that had fallen to the floor, where the embers there still linger. Dwayne had written about his love. He left no mark, but only this. So we gathered yarn to sing and watched the moon arising through the branches high above. And the old black bear and the creaking pine, while coyotes sang, we were strumming our guitars. How did they come here? Were they rambling just like us? Or had they run from heaven's door, or from the gates of hell? My sweet friend simply said, a voice that's in the wilderness summoned them to keep a heartbreak's broken spell.
Wonderful. Like that. Totally different to your first track we played. I like that. That's I can see why that's got quite a lot of streams, because that's good music there. Changes a few times in it, the music and what have you, which is good.
I think it's still got that thing about space.
Yeah, it has. It has. It's very different. If you played, I think if you played that to anybody and said what genre do you think this is, I wouldn't say country music.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, the 4 tracks that are on this, the most recent EP, so Ballad we just played and Canyons we did, they've ended up sort of being a little bit of a pair. Sort of, they're in the same sort of universe. They're this expansive landscape kind of thing in my head. And then the other 2, Moonshine Running and Silver Moon, Silver Girl, are they're in a different world. I hope you can tell it's all part of the same band. It's all part of the same thought process. But they do start to fall into these little sort of their own little camps of things. And for me, again, Ballad was almost a surprise as to how it came out. Because again, it was one of these ones that Steve started off with the words, I think, and then Kev took on the music. Until you start to hear it all come together, you think, I don't know I'm not quite sure where this one's going. But again, we tried to keep it quite simple. You could go in with both of these songs, Canyons and Ballad. You'd go in guns blazing, throwing all kinds of instruments at it, tricks, trying to do loads and loads of stuff. But actually, we tried to keep it as simple as we could, trying to create the world that we were looking for. And certainly with Ballad in the studio, we were just a couple of things that we did. We thought that little riff there, that little that sound there, that's the bedrock of it. And then we put little colours in and little bits on top of it. It trundles along, isn't it? It's one of my favourites. From my point of view, because I 20 years ago I did a music degree, so in theory I know about how music is put together. And the brilliant thing about Ballad is that there are some things in it which literally, Bach would have been proud to have been breaking these rules. Beethoven would have bowed down at our feet for the rules that we're breaking in that song. And I remember sitting there in the studio and trying to work out. Like Steve often casually asks me, "What are the chords for this bit, Bish?" And I'm like, I don't know. I know I can tell you the notes I'm playing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what what it should be. But there's some bits where it's like it's instinct taking over. It's not overthinking it, and it's not knowing what you're doing, but it's instinct making the sound world. And I think that's, for me, that's terribly useful, because I'm a terrible overthinker for the sort of technicality of music. Whereas
I think what I bring to the party is my singular lack of musical education.
Lack of talent. It makes it brilliant.
It's obviously freeing to not know what you're doing, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, again, that's one of the things. One of the reasons I think that we three work quite well together is because we bring different musical sort of backgrounds, but also sort of technical backgrounds as well. That we understand different things about how things work. And Steve is very instinctive in how he creates music. I'm a bit more methodical and technical, and Kev is somewhere in the middle. I think Kev brings in both sides of it, and it means that we get these weird little gems sometimes. I think it's brilliant. I think I love it.
Yeah, no, I like it too. And you're right, and you do need that in a successful team, band or whatever. You need those different things, don't you? You need a bit of crazy, you need the stability, you need the thinker, you need you need all that thrown together, and that's when it works, doesn't it? And often, like you explaining that, what you're talking about, that song, keeping it simple, I think all too often in business and in music, people think they've got to throw everything at it. It's a bit like if you go to these meetings and they have a PowerPoint presentation and someone has all the swooshes and the sounds of them, and stop! So we don't need all that. Yeah. Just give us the essence of your message and a few little tricks on top. We're happy with that. And I like the way you said the bedrock and the language you're using fits the track, and then your little colours. So you obviously, I was envisaging then the canyon and you put in little cactus and little things on the road. I can see a long road now with all this stuff.
I think the heart of what we're trying to do, Kev said it in the last in a video to me, is that we're in the business of reimagining country music, Americana, isn't a rule book. Or didn't start off a rule book. It started off a bunch of people living in a hut or wherever, grabbing an instrument they happen to have, which thank God was a guitar slightly more often than a banjo, and making the music out of where they came from and what it was all about. And I think we consciously want to kind of skip back to that bit. We want to go back to saying, well, let's make the music that's in our hearts and souls and bellies as rather than this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have 4 chords in country music. It's supposed to be about those things. Country music is a spirit to us, not a.
I like that, and it's almost
not a recipe or not a prescription.
It's almost got a folk feel. Sportsman's got a folk feel to it, and I love new country. I love old stuff. I love bluegrass. I love all of it. You know what I mean? And I do like a lot of the modern stuff. You're right. Is like I went down the old dirt road with my coffee cup and my those lyrics are put in there, and there's a certain vibe and a certain feel to it. If you play music from now that's been released now, you can tell it's from now, as well as if you play country music from say 2000. There's a totally different vibe to it, a totally different feel to where it is. But yours is almost gone like to a more like telling stories, like folk stories.
If you're not careful, it's a narrative that captures you. We're living in the times of the protests and things. And country music wasn't white blues music. That's another of the myths that's been kind of created about it. It was another expression of working people in a particular part of the world, and and it wasn't that narrow thing. It's become, and we miss the joy of it if we don't go back to that and think, well, it is how I feel today. Even if it's lying on a settee with cocoa.
and that's an interesting, you've talked about that, because I've just recently done another interview with a rapper from New York, and we talked about the blues, and we talked about the blues went off in 2 different directions. One was country and one was rap and rock and roll, and then that went to hip hop and reggae and all the rest of it. It's very interesting, because country music, as the feel, you associate country music with where it's Nashville and Texas and all that sort of desert thing, and it's
then you've got people early on, like Willie Nelson, who really rejected that and tried to didn't get involved with the Nashville thing, went off to Austin or wherever, but to me one of the great country writers is Chuck Berry. He was writing about his world and his places and his towns and his life, and using the stuff that around him. He's the poet laureate of American music.
I think it is all about storytelling, and not only with the lyrics, but with our job with the instrumentation is to serve the song. I always say the song is king, and you can also tell part of the story with the atmosphere you create around the lyric. And I think we explore that quite a lot, especially on the recent stuff we've done.
We're not overly hung up on whether we can really pinpoint what our music is. I mean, we sometimes have to, for when we're uploading to iTunes, and you've got to pick a category for it to go into. And I think country is on there now, but when me and Steve started putting music on iTunes, the genre did not exist for what we were trying to do, and back then me and Steve didn't know what we were trying to do either. But even now, there isn't a slot for the stuff that we're making, and actually that's fine, because people find music in different ways these days. It's not. I said this on our podcast a few weeks ago, that you don't go to HMV anymore and look at the racks of CDs in there. The jazz section, the folk section, the country, the classic. I just don't think that happens anymore. I think people find things much more sort of in a scattergun approach, and I don't think people are that bothered about what they like anymore. They just like what they like.
It's a good point. It's a good point. It's a valid point, and that's one I like what you've said there, because Duggystone Radio was set up to showcase emerging artists, emerging presenters, as well as some of the stuff that people knew. And people struggle sometimes, and we struggle with it for quite some time. And I think you, guys, might be the same, where we're saying, what's our identity? what folk genre should we focus on? And I often say, well, actually, to myself and the rest of the team, what music do you like? Yeah, do you like a bit of country? Do you like a bit of pop? Do you like a bit of hip hop? Do you like a bit of blues? Do you like? Yeah, right. So if we like that, then everyone else should. Then there's another group of people that don't just want to listen to indie or folk or country. They want a bit of a melting pot of different things, and I think that's why we're not a genre station. We're
and at the end of the day, a good song is a good song.
Correct. Exactly. And it doesn't matter.
It's sometimes being provoked yourself into listening to something that you wouldn't think that you'd like.
Most definitely, and that's happened. That's happened with the station because one of the presenters does a blues show, and when he said he was doing a rock show, and then he said I've changed my show. It's going to be, and when he said he was going to do blues, I'm like, oh no, just like no, it's not. Anyway, he did it. This is in my head. I'm thinking, oh no. Do you know what? It's one of the best shows on the station because he goes to all different places, and it's not because they're very rigid, aren't they? These genres are very rigid. Rock, blues. And then straight away you think of it's going to be about this. Country, it's a banjo, someone talking about his dog's died and his wife's left him, and it's not that, is it? It's not that. No. And it's wonderful. I think that's
so funny. When I was doing a little for one of Chris's great podcasts, and I was talking about my years in folk music, and the first time we went into a studio, my mate Tim was a brilliant fiddler, and we recorded this instrumental, and in folk dance music or traditional folk music, you have an A part and a B part. So that you play the A part for 8 bars or whatever, twice, and then you do the B part. And what he did when he recorded it was is he played, when he was doing the B part, he continued to play the A part very quietly underneath. What an interesting creative act, I thought. That sounds really, really cool. You thought we'd gone mooning with the Pope. I'm not joking. When it hit the radio stations, I mean, we're not quite death threats, but it was completely out to lunch. That when he wrote it.
I'm writing that quote down. Mooning with the Pope. I like that.
That's the next album title, Steve.
That's the quote of the day. But I get it, and a lot of the time it takes people, and like yourselves and other bands, to push against the what is expected, because if you don't, things don't evolve and don't change, do they? So if you push back, true. You have to break the mold, don't you? Otherwise, we'd still be listening to big band sounds, wouldn't we? If people hadn't gone and made rock and roll or whatever, we'd still be listening to.
And the rules are just weird things. I mean, I was having in discussion with the BBC last week because they don't play our music very much. And,
more fool them.
And they said, well, it's too long. Our tracks tend to be 4+ minutes.
Yeah.
We don't play stuff, and I get the argument, we don't play stuff much over 3 minutes. I thought we'd broken that rule back with Bohemian Rhapsody and John Miles' Music or whatever it was. I thought we'd broken that rule, but quietly it's been reinstated. Don't play stuff to the BBC because of their schedules and things. That's more than 3 minutes, which rules out most of our songs.
Well, that is absolutely bonkers, isn't it? That might be a fob you're off story, but that's bonkers because, and that proves it's not about the music; it's about what the message and the presenters, isn't it? I played. Yes, I do some shows, and we'll play a 9-minute track and just let it rock. You know what I mean? Because that is the track. So what? It's not filler. That was what the artists, wanted to do. Sometimes we cut them down, we'll play it and cut it down. But I think that's a ludicrous way of looking at 3 minutes.
Yeah, but it's funny, these rules keep coming back all the time. No. It's like Chris was saying, there are musical rules, which fortunately I have managed to live my entire life in complete ignorance of. All I know is I've done something wrong is when Chris raises one of his eyebrows.
I always like the quote from Andy Partridge of XTC when he was asked to describe their music, and he said, "We look for those dark, dirty corners of your guitar where people don't go, and we go there."
That is quite powerful, isn't it? That is quite powerful.
It is, yeah.
And they were a great band, quoting MXTC. They were very different, weren't they? They were brilliant.
Yeah.
Love them. I do. Brilliant. Absolutely wonderful. I'll tell you what we'll do. We better add, because for the show we said we'd pick another track. We've got another one of yours, which is called Wrapped Up in You. Yeah? So we'll have a little listen to this. I'll put the needle on the record, as it were.
I laid down my gun, the long day was done. I was looking to lighten the load. Stopped rolling dice, I've learned to think twice. I said goodbye to the road. Wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you. When you came into view, it was all I could do to stand up and open the gate. Something I would find would do things to my mind. Gave up all resistance to my fate. Wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you. With the sun on your skin, you smile, let me in, I put my hat on the back of your door. Your eyes catch a fire like a lighter on the wire, couldn't help but come back for more. Wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you. You're a poet, you're a lover, you're an angel undercover, you're the best thing that happened to me. Nothing that is fake, there's no one on the take. You're the fruit from the magical tree. Wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you, wrapped up in you. Surrender to a night of bliss. We're rolling and tumbling into heaven. I am stumbling. I never had a lover like this. Wrapped up in you, 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 wrapped up in you.
It's definitely a toe tapper, that one, isn't it? I like that. That's really cool. I know it's that's popular as well, and I like it where the harmonies come in and that's up. You've got you singing, and then you've got the extra level layer on top. It's good that.
When he wrote that, when Steve came up with that, I just went single that one.
Yeah, and you've kept it to just over 3 minutes. You've done well there.
Yeah,
should be on the BBC, 3 minutes 20. Get on to them now. Whispering Bob Harris, you can play this. It's 3 minutes 20. More fool them. That's all I can say. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, I like that. It's a great track. Wonderful track.
It's like an accidental one. But the harmonies are really exciting. I mean, the harmonies are Chris and Kev. And they snuck them into the sound when I went out one day. I made the mistake of leaving the studio one night. I think I went down to see somebody in London, and I got back.
Never leave us unsupervised.
They were like naughty schoolboys. They were giggling, and then they played me this track off the Rattlesnake album. And it sounded like, Freddie Mercury and his gang had turned up overnight. It was brilliant. I love it now.
Well, and that one out of the tracks that we've played, of the 3 tracks we've played on the show, one you don't have to think about, do you? Does that make sense to me as a listener?
Exactly,
I don't have to think about that. It's open you, wrapped up in you. I don't have to think about, what's he said there and what's he said there. It's like, brilliant, wrapped up in. I'll bang that on. That's a real good,
It's hooky. It's
straight
hooky.
away. Wrapped up in that's in my head now. And I'm glad you were Naughty Schoolboys because I do like that. I like what we've done with that. Do. Because I was sat in my studio here and I was tapping away, my foot was going and boom, boom, going to the beat. It's got that beat that you can really get behind, and sometimes I've said this, I've spoke about this with another artist the other week, that you don't have to think about it. It's just like, let's just get it on. It's different.
Yeah, we always get there's always a couple of songs like that just come through with us, and they are what they are, and you sort of know instinctively not to do too much with them. They work,
Yeah, definitely. Wonderful. I love it. Well, so what's next on these? You've obviously got some other. You're trying to get to do some gigs when everyone can go gigging, and we're all looking forward to going to gigs as well. So, are you working on new? Have you been working on new music while you've been while the current situation's been on? What have you been up to?
Yeah, we've done a little bit, haven't we, Steve?
Yeah, well, we've got the next 2 EPs recorded.
Wow.
So the idea is the next well, it's all got up in the air now. I don't know. We might have this conversation later on today. The next one's due out in July. So we recorded 15 tracks altogether, which were basically the idea is to release them over a year. Mm-hmm. So the last one, EP Moonshine Energy, that had 4 on, that came out in late April, was it? Yeah. And then the idea was we'd do another in July and one in September, October. So we're still going to do that. I mean, they're all recorded. I'm really excited about them. We've got to go and build some videos. That's because you can't do anything without video. I mean, one learning is you need videos these days to make things work. And I'm lucky because these two guys are actually really good at producing videos. So
brilliant.
We've got that to do. We're building Chris's podcasts every week, which Kev and I send our little contributions into. And I do recommend you go and find the last one, because I do think they're all brilliant, but the last one does have probably the rarest Jimi Hendrix song in the world on.
Funny, because I'm thinking of things to talk about, and I'll ask you questions. You've answered it. You come up with one of my questions. Really was what advice for people that are going into the music industry now, because you guys have obviously been around a while. I'm not. You've not been around. Well, put it that way. You've not just started, have you? A couple of years ago. You've been around more than a decade. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not being ageist here, but I'm just making an assumption you've been around longer. So things have changed, moved on, haven't they? It's totally different to what it was even 10 years ago, but go back 20 years.
It was a really simple life in the 80s. I mean, Chris probably has got more insight on this because he's been doing a lot of sort of background stuff on it. But in the 80s, it was quite straightforward. You can make a decent living and actually not be particularly famous. I mean, we did it. I was doing the folk clubs and, music clubs, and you get a decent amount of money. In fact, probably about the same as you get now. And you'd sell a box of albums each gig. It was an okay life, really. And I'm sure Kev had much the same experience, but even bigger. Nowadays, it's harder. In one sense, the thing that's undermined it, because it's got easier at the front end. The big deal was to get a record deal, but now it's irrelevant, to be frank. Where the other record. Now there's so much noise in the market. You have to keep a huge amount of perseverance, really, to keep going, and you're going to make your money because you get YouTube advertising.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's part of the reason that we're doing these 4 EPs over the course of a year rather than one big album. A lot of people in the industry are basically saying, look, things have changed. That people don't. The interest in an album has changed. I think there are still some people who say, yes, I would like an album. I want a physical. But actually, I think most people don't consume music like that. Even if there is an artistic reason for there being 10, 12, 15 songs in one place, one bucket. Market forces these days just don't bear it out. And I think you could expend a lot of time, energy, and money on putting out a 12-track album that gets as much interest as you would if you just put out a single or an EP.
Yeah.
And so
we've
we're
spoken
trying
before, haven't we, about that? About the first time I noticed this model was with Joe Bonamassa's manager, and how he was releasing things at an incredible rate.
Yeah.
Which at the time I thought, what's that all about? But then I realised he was never out of the news. He always had something going on. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with the slow release of the EPs, you know.
And sort of, there always being something new to talk about. And it actually helps our focus as well, because rather than thinking, okay, we've got one product with 12 little sub things, right now we've got one product with 4 little sublines. And we can and we can spend a couple of weeks on each song or whatever, and actually it sort of helps us to divvy up the work in our own heads in a way. Over the course of the year, we'll have, well, from October last year to October this year, we'll have 4 EPs, 15 brand new songs released, and we'll have hopefully have been in people's consciousnesses pretty consistently throughout that whole year, rather than a big peak, which we could have had back in March or whatever, or April, releasing a big, 12-track album. So we're trying it and we'll see what happens, and we'll just, we'll see.
that is really interesting and definitely a good tip for people, because in the industry is very noisy. We're always looking to see what's coming out. And, if you go onto iTunes or Spotify or wherever, or YouTube, you get, this is I always look to see what the latest releases are. Eddie does a show with the latest tracks that have been released. Now, if you released the album in October, you would fall off our radar. But if you release another EP next month, because I'm following you, say on Spotify or iTunes, it'll go, boom, one of your favourite artists has released some. So
I mean, just imagine with the advent of the virus, if we'd released the album, your tour gets stopped and you've got nothing else to say,
Yeah, it's good.
You can't go out and gig it.
Well, I was going to loads of events that various people in the industry were putting on. One of the people there was basically dance music, so music that clubs play and mixes, and they were basically saying, look, our artists are putting out a new mix. Okay, different world to us, because it's not necessarily creating their own music, but their own mix of music. They're putting out a new thing which gets interest every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So they spend a week basically marketing it, then they spend a week making the next one. They just keep on churning and churning and churning. And okay, that's quite perhaps an extreme. That's on the likes of people who are, you hear about people who make 59-second songs now.
Yeah.
Because that's how long a video is on Instagram. 50 seconds of a video on Instagram. And some people are making their careers out of doing that. And I'm not disparaging it. That's the way they're doing it.
Different, isn't it? Different.
It's an extreme way of doing it. We could be stuck in, back in the olden days and releasing, 12-track albums and doggedly trying to stick to how things were. But actually, that doesn't work either. Those two extremes are
middle ground.
They're extremes. So we're trying somewhere in the middle, and it might be that next year, forget about EPs and it's all just singles. We release a single every month. Who knows?
And that might be the way it goes. From me, I'm always looking for what's new, and that'd be perfect for me, because you keep popping up every week and go, here's a new track for them. Here's a new track for them.
Even the creations that we're making, we're not just doing this music. I mean, it's the music and the podcast. And we call it the Vagabond Way. The Vagabond Way is the name of the podcast.
Yeah.
And just this approach to making stuff, and it's just a way of trying to be present in people's consciousness all the time. We hope with stuff that people like. We're not just pumping stuff out there because it's some big vanity project. It's because we hope that people actually like it and are entertained by it, and are maybe a bit provoked by it, sparks off some thoughts or some, just something, rather than these huge peaks and troughs of lots of activity and then nothing. Just trying to keep it tickling along, and it's going pretty well so far. We've had the hits on Spotify are the biggest successes we've ever had. So we'll just keep on chipping away at it, and whatever the industry has become over the last 10 years and will become because of coronavirus, we'll just keep on rolling with it and see. Good. And see what happens.
And I think there's a double win. This is like really hot off the press, and I get obsessed with looking at the numbers that now turn, because that's the way you can see how doing a good job. What I've noticed in the last month is that this idea of continually refreshing that Chris was talking about, not only is good, but it actually starts to have a big effect on some of the other stuff you've done in the past. Because people then go, look. So, for instance, Wrapped Up in You, which probably peaked November, is still our second. Is still each week being listened to, our second most listened to track. We've not promoted it. We've not talked about it. It just week in, week out, 1,000 odd people listen to it. And then last week, somebody had been there, put a track I wrote years ago called London Midnight Talking, and that week that suddenly became our second big, for a few days, our second biggest most listened to track. So it's an interesting world. You've got to keep the faith and not go mad, because we failed at that second bit.
we're all mad, and all the best people, I think, are a bit crazy. There's a fine line between genius and being absolutely off your trolley. I've really enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you, and I hope people
Likewise.
that are listening or discover this at some point in the future go away and try and find a little bit more about you guys, because I think you're an interesting group of individuals who come together to create this thing you create. I think it's great. Yeah, and that's not a derogative thing. I'm just saying it's this you're creating something that's unique. That's unique to you guys. It's not it's not prescriptive, is it? So where can people find you?
If you're looking on Facebook or Spotify or whatever, search for Steve Bonham and The Long Road. If you're looking for the podcast, we post it under the Steve Bonham and The Long Road page. If you're looking on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for the podcast, it's called The Vagabond Way, youtube.com/The Vagabond Way. And we've got all our music videos and stuff on there. So, check it out and, see if it floats your boat.
Wonderful. Well, it floats my boat, and I definitely know that. So I really enjoy it, and I wish you all the success. Looking forward to seeing you back on the road. And if you're in any location to where I am, I'm going to do my damnedest to come and see you. I've got so many artists to go and see. It's unbelievable. I'll never be at home if I go and watch everybody. It's crazy. But thank you for giving me your time and your thoughts, and being very open.
Pleasure.
Being very open and candid about what you do, where you come from, why you're doing it. So it's been wonderful for me.
Great. Thanks, Dave.
Cheers. Take care, mate.
Another interview done. That was Steve Bonham and The Long Road. That was a great interview. Really nice to speak to him. There will be a video that accompanies this. If you go to duggystoneradio.com, there should be a blog on there with all the information and this audio as well. You've been listening to... Oh yeah. This has been recorded for Duggystone Radio. If you don't listen on SoundCloud, please subscribe, or why not hop over to duggystoneradio.com or say, Alexa, open internet radio. Also, go and check out Ken Meakin's page, which is Country Music Social Media. He showcases amazing artists like Steve Bonham and The Long Road. Until next time, stay safe. See ya. The Duggystone Show.